OC Rock Radio. It is time for the Cover 2 podcast live edition. I'm Nick Neenan.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And today we got a fantastic show for you guys. We are going to be talking NFL. Jared's Cowboys got a big win they do every week. We're going to be talking a lot about the college football playoffs. There's a lot of big games, including tonight, Colorado, Washington. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about Doc Rivers' rant and him trying to fight a referee the other night. We'll do another edition of Do You Care? But I want to start the show by, like we mentioned, your Cowboys got a big win tonight. I want to know what you think about the win.
They did. Big win. I don't know if I want to call it a big win.
No, Minnesota's not that good. You're right.
No, Minnesota's not that good. I'm even though the Cowboys played a very, ugly game, put it that way. I'm actually encouraged because they were still able to win, even though they turned the ball over twice, and they weren't clicking on offense or defense. They had a big special teams turnover that led to a touchdown that pretty much saved them. But other than that, and their defense actually played very well, despite everything else. But for the most part, it was kind of just they never got into a rhythm. Zeke was getting just tough 2, 3, 4 yard runs. Never could really break anything. Actually, he did break a run. I think it was in the second quarter, but it got called back for a holding penalty.
You're right.
That's another thing the Cowboys need to kind of get together is their penalties. They can do that against a team like Minnesota, who's not that good. But when you want to go up against an elite team, the Giants are pretty good. They still have to play the Eagles later on in the season, who are really tough. And then when you get into the playoffs, when you get all these holding calls that negate 50, 60-yard runs, that's going to come back to bite you. So they need to definitely clean that up. But I'm encouraged by 11 straight wins. I just going back to the whole Romo Dak. I still feel bad for Romo. I'm always going to feel bad for Romo, but
poor Romo.
But Dak's doing his thing, and right now they're clicking. So they get a nice little break. They don't have to play till the following next Sunday night. They play.
Yeah, it's back-to-back Thursdays, right?
They did. They played on Thanksgiving.
I don't think that's ever happened before.
They did it a few years ago.
They did?
Yeah. So they played on Thanksgiving, and then they played last night, and then obviously they get pretty much. I think they get 10 days off, and then they play next Sunday night in New York against the Giants. So that'll be a big game, but at least they'll have some rest.
So I heard a lot of people talking about this, on the rounds, ESPN stuff, about who should be MVP this season. There's like 5 guys. A lot of people say Derek Carr. I saw Tom Brady's name in there. And then obviously Dak and Elliott. Who do you think is the better guy, or do you think that it's kind of a toss-up and they should just both win it?
I would, if you're strictly talking between Dak and Zeke, I would give it to Zeke. I think Dak has been phenomenal. I mean, I'm not, discrediting him at all. He is, for a rookie quarterback to come in and do what he's done, that he's been absolutely phenomenal. Zeke, he's able to change defenses. Defenses are eyeing him. He's like a Dez Bryant, where you're forced to put 8, 9 guys in the box. So I would actually give it to Zeke when you're just talking about the 2 Cowboys who are in consideration. I actually believe that right now, Derek Carr will probably, if the voting were today, I think Derek Carr would actually win just because of not only the numbers that he's putting up, but, I mean, no one really thought Oakland was going to be, what are they, 9-2?
9-2, yeah.
And first place in the AFC West right now. So I would actually give it to Derek Carr. But nothing against my boys. Nick, what do you think?
I agree with you. I think it's Derek Carr too. Just you kind of put it perfectly. Nobody expected them to be 9-2. I mean, they're literally 1 game back of the Cowboys. Nobody thinks of it that way as far as the records go, because the Cowboys have won 11 straight, and it just seems like they win every week. But the Raiders have only lost 1 more game than the Cowboys, and they've lost the same amount of games as the Patriots this year. So I think you got to give it to Carr. I think the reason that Prescott and Elliott won't win it is because they're kind of close. I think it's hard to say when you have 2 guys like that how could one guy be more valuable than the other if there's two? I always said that if there's two superstars on a team, just don't give it to one of those guys because it's hard to predict that. Give it to a guy that's kind of doing it on his own. Say like what Russell Westbrook is doing with Oklahoma State this year, just to kind of put another sport into it.
Averaging a triple-double, by the way.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that probably later, too. But so I think it's Derek Carr, too. Should be interesting to see how they finish out the season. I believe they play the Chiefs and Broncos one more time.
Yes, they do. They actually play the Chiefs next Thursday.
Okay, there you go.
A Thursday game, so that'll be a short week.
A good Thursday night game for once. Hopefully those teams come to play. But no, so I think it's Derek Carr, too. I think he doesn't have the weapons that the Cowboys do or Brady does as well. So I think he's using a tougher team to get to where he's at, too. But no, I think I think they're good. I wanted to ask you this, too, just since you follow the Cowboys so hard. Do you think they're the best team in the NFC, and do you think they're the best team in the NFL?
I think they're the best team in the NFC. I'm not going to say like by far just blowing everyone out of the water, but I think, yes, I do think they are the best team in the NFC. The AFC, I think they're better than Oakland.
I agree.
I think they would, in a head-to-head match, I think they can't say we, I think they would beat Oakland. I'm still scared of the Patriots. As long as the Patriots have Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, I don't think you can ever count them out.
No.
Now, I will say, unlike past years, I don't think the Patriots' defense is as good as it used to be. I think there's some holes that they have, especially not paying some of their superstar defenders and letting them go, like the Cleveland.
Yeah.
Like they did with
that team that hasn't won a game all season.
Yeah, like was it Collins?
Jamie Collins.
Jamie Collins, yeah, and other guys like that. So I don't think their defense is as good, but Tom Brady and Bill Belichick together are still very, very scary. So I would, right now, as of today, yes, I would say the Cowboys are probably the best team because they have the most momentum. They have a 11-game winning streak going on. But I'm still going to put the Patriots up there. I'm still afraid of the Patriots, and I still think in the playoffs they're still lethal.
Okay, so and I think the Cowboys are good too. I still favor the Seahawks a little bit because of their defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Cowboys' defense is. I wouldn't say they're like a top 5 defense in the league.
No, not at all. They're middle of the pack.
Yeah, middle of the pack. Maybe top 10. I don't know. But I would say just the Seahawks' defense is so freaking good. It just seems like anytime a team gets into the red zone, field goals coming. Like you have to make a big play against the Seahawks in order to score against them. And I think the offense has just been getting better and better and better too. I don't look at records a lot with the NFL just because we saw it last week. The Seahawks lost to the Buccaneers. They shouldn't have lost to the Buccaneers. I think they scored like 5 points, which is super, super rare in the NFL. So they didn't even score a touchdown. But I'm still going to go with the Seahawks. I think they're the best team in the NFC. But I would love to see that Seahawks and Cowboys matchup. I hope it happens in the playoffs too. But no, I got to agree with you. The Patriots are definitely that team, to kind of be messed with a little bit because they just every single year they're so good. Jerry, what do you think about Gronk's injury? Well, hold on. Let me set the stage. Rob Gronkowski is out possibly for the season. Herniated disc, is that what it was?
Yes, it was definitely a lot more serious than what they originally thought.
Yeah, so I think they said 8 weeks for sure, which would give him time back for the playoffs, but I heard another rumor that he might not play. Otherwise, so for most of the playoffs, they're not going to have Gronkowski. Do you think that will affect them, or do you think just like you said, Belichick, Brady are so good that it won't even matter?
It's going to affect them. Gronkowski is the best tight end in the NFL, and it's almost I almost want to compare it to J.J. Watt with the Houston Texans. When you lose a player of that magnitude, there's going to be somewhat of a drop off. Now, fortunately for the Patriots, they have Martellus Bennett, who is a solid tight end. I mean, he could start from multiple teams in this league. So now there is a drop off there, but he's still going to be able to come in. I think he had. I think it was Tom Brady's first game back now, albeit they were playing the Cleveland Browns.
That team is 0-12, right?
0-12, yes. But Bennett did have 3 touchdowns in that game. So the guy can catch, he can score, he can block, he can do all the things necessary to take over Gronkowski's spot. I think it's going to hurt them in the sense that defenses are now, it's one less playmaker that they have to game plan for. So now Tom Brady's going to have to, fit the ball into tighter spots. He's going to be probably relying a little bit more on his receivers, maybe his running backs to be receiving threats. So I do think it is going to affect them a little bit, but not enough to, force them to lose a game or anything of that magnitude. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Martellus Bennett is a starting tight end in the league. I feel like any team would like to have a guy like that. He's a fantastic player. I'm going to go back to when they played the Cardinals without Gronk, and I remember how they kind of used the smaller receivers like Edelman and Amendola, a lot of crossing routes and stuff like that. So I think they'll just, they'll try to move the ball down the field slowly. They won't try to make as big a plays as they usually do because they don't have that big play threat like Gronk. I think they'll rely on the running game a lot more too. They do get Dion Lewis back eventually too. They have James White. They have LeGarrette Blount, fantastic running backs. So, they still got a good roster. I agree with you, though, on the defense as far as they're not as good as they have been in past years.
No.
And I think that could get them in the playoffs this year. I think if, say, a Raiders decide to score a ton of points in the game, maybe the Patriots don't have enough to come back in a game. So I don't know. I wouldn't bet on the Patriots losing, but I think that could eventually hurt them a little bit, that they could slip up and allow a lot of points to some of those high-scoring teams, not teams like the Chiefs or teams like that who's kind of score lower, but those high-scoring teams that can get into the playoffs. I think that will affect them for sure. So the Patriots do play a pretty good game this weekend, and they face LA's favorite team, the LA Rams. But nobody's been talking about the football side of the LA Rams, the game side of the LA Rams this week. As most of you probably know, since this was a national story, Jeff Fisher and Eric Dickerson essentially hate each other now. I think they already did dislike each other, but now it's bad because Jeff Fisher called Eric Dickerson and told him he couldn't stand on the sideline for Rams games anymore because of what he said on his show, the Eric Dickerson Show, on Mondays on the radio this past week. So, Jared, what do you think about this whole fiasco?
I don't even know what to think. This is so bizarre. And for Jeff Fisher, how does this even make news? You're the head coach of a national, a professional team.
Yeah.
Your job is to be coaching your team,
exactly.
Not worrying about these little antics or about what. Now, Eric Dickerson is obviously the best Rams running back.
Oh, totally.
In the Hall of Fame.
Player,
yeah, he's a legend. So for Fisher to say that he can't be on the sidelines, that's I don't know if he's got that, if he can really back that up. I don't think his pay grade can back that one up. No. So I'm actually very surprised by this. I really don't think it's going to stand. I don't think this is a publicity stunt. I do think these guys actually have a beef going on.
Definitely.
And
definitely.
You know what? Eric Dickerson, he came out and said, he's like, I'm not going to go to an LA Rams game again until Fisher is fired. Uh-huh. So we'll see if actually holds true. Obviously, the Rams aren't going to make the playoffs this year, so not too many games left for Dickerson to go to. But
he wouldn't want to go to the games anyway.
Yeah, he's probably not going to want to go there anyway. But just very, I really don't even know what to think. I'm stumped. I'm going to let you take over. Hopefully, you got something better.
Well, I've been following this a lot this week, and essentially, it actually got a little bit worse as the week went on. It got a little better today because Dickerson and CEO of the Rams, Kevin Demoff, met for a dinner in L.A., and essentially Dickerson came out and asked him, are you going to extend Jeff Fisher? Demoff didn't know what to say. So Dickerson went on Colin Cowherd's show this morning and said, he said the thing about he's not going to a game, and he essentially said he wants Fisher fired. He does not like him as a coach. He's had a losing record as a Rams coach. It's been 5 years of losing and kind of just averageness from the Rams. But at one point, Fisher had come out and said that there was nothing, that he didn't even call Dickerson, which was a total lie, like he's been doing the whole year. This kind of leaves me the chance to say my grief about Fisher as well. I'm not an LA Rams fan. I follow them because it's kind of impossible not to here in LA. But even as a guy looking on the outside, Rams have to fire Jeff Fisher. Okay, there's far better options than him. I know he's a USC guy. I know you want him to be in the Coliseum. You know, he's been with the team for a long time. The players, I don't know if the players like him or not, but I assume the players know his system and stuff like that. But I just think it's so many years of 8-8, 7-9, 9-7. I mean, we all remember the famous line on the
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks, yeah. Hard Knocks this year. I believe it was the first show where he goes, "We're not going to go 7-8, 7-9. We're not going to go 8-8. We're not going to go 9-7. We're not even going to go 10-6. No, you're going to go like 5-11." So he was right. They weren't going to go all those records because they're going to end up 5-11 more than likely based on who they play. But so I think it's time for a change. What do you think? Do you think there's a chance or do you think you give him one more year, or do you think you just get rid of him?
If I'm the Rams CEO, or owner, at the end of the season, I'm firing him.
Yeah,
he's
fire him right now.
Yeah. I don't know about right now. I mean, I really don't know what good that's going to do to fire him right now, in the middle of the season. But no, it's time. The NFL stands for not for long. Yeah. And it definitely applies to players, but it also applies to coaches. And so for me, what I look at is, and what pretty much every player or coach kind of lives by, is their winning record and their percentage, win-loss record. So for Jeff Fisher, who his entire coaching body as a whole, he has been an under 500 coach, losing percentage. Uh-huh. With the Rams, same thing. Under 500, losing percentage. So he's been with the Rams for how long now?
This is his fifth year.
His fifth year? I'm not sure of too many other coaches who would get the opportunity to be with the team for 5 years and not have one single winning record.
Yeah, no, I know.
It doesn't make any sense to me. And then this offseason during Hard Knocks, it came out, I forget which source, if it was ESPN or Vox Sports, but a news source came out and said that the Rams were looking to extend Jeff Fisher for 3 more years. 3 years? How can you extend this guy? What? I guess you're okay with being mediocre?
Yeah.
They like having high draft picks every year?
Hey, man, if you want USC to sell at the Coliseum and you not to, that's fine every year.
Yeah, I mean, what? Look, USC looks like they could beat the Rams right now. Now, that's not true. That's taking a little too far.
Yeah. Todd Helton's probably a better coach than Jeff Fisher, though.
But I think people know where I'm going is this guy, at some point, you got to put your foot down. You know, who knows? Maybe the owner's really good friends with Jeff Fisher, and it's just really tough for him to let go. But you know what? At a certain point, do you want fans to fill the stadium? You know, do you want to start making money? Do you want this team to win? Or do you want to just be the mediocre St. Louis team that you guys have been for the last decade or so?
Yeah.
So for me, it's an easy decision. It's never easy to actually fire someone, so I'm not going to say that. But when you strictly look at the win-loss record, that in itself says enough for me.
And that's been the biggest thing for me. Now, that combined with his just total, where he just lies all the time, or he stretches the truth about, when he's going to play Jared Goff, or, that he thought Case Keenum had a good game when he threw for under 200 yards. And, it's ridiculous. And then he came out and said that he complained that they've had a hard year because they had a bunch of different training camp locations. And the guy's just complaining. And that was after he denied the Eric Dickerson stuff, too. So, I just think they need to change. And I came up with 2 because I've wanted him fired the whole week. I was actually more passionate about this on Monday, Tuesday, so I'm actually more subdued today.
Oh, boy. I think that's good for this show.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of cuss words earlier in the week that I can't say on this show. So I came up with 2 coaching solutions, and they are offensive guys because the Rams defense is one of the best in the league. No one can argue that. 2 offensive guys. I came up with Ken Wisenhunt, the Titan, San Diego offensive coordinator. San Diego, a top 10 offense. A guy, obviously, San Diego could be in LA, so you're not going to be moving too far from San Diego to LA. And he's had a good track record. He's been to a Super Bowl with the Cardinals. He has been a quarterbacks coach in the past as well. So you get Jared Goff, a coach that really wants to make him good, which I think that's the one thing the Rams need. They just need that and an offensive line, but you can't really teach an offensive line to get, be a superstar. Kind of teach a quarterback that. So Ken Wisenhunt is one. You change that offense and you make it more of a even team, not just an all defense team. And my other one was, you know what? I'm actually blanking on who it's the Raiders offensive coordinator, so I'm gonna look it up. But what do you think about the Wisenhunt?
I actually I do like that comparison, and for multiple reasons. What you said, first of all, you brought up a good point that the Chargers could potentially be moving to LA. Uh-huh. So, like you said, he'll get to stay in Southern California. Won't have to move too far. He is great with developing quarterbacks, and that I think is something that will definitely help Jared Goff. Another thing, if the Rams do fire Jeff Fisher, more than likely his entire staff will be gone.
Yeah.
It's rare when the head coach gets fired and the assistant coaches stay. Usually he takes his whole staff with him and a whole new staff comes in. So I think it will be vital for the Rams to want to get another, a solid quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator who can come in and bring some, I guess, balance to Jared Goff, because I think this is what happened with the likes of and RG3 and multiple other quarterbacks who have been deemed busts in their early careers, is that a lot of times, yes, you need to go out and you need to perform, and ultimately it's on the player to go out and make plays. But what people sometimes don't realize is that when you have 3, 4, 5 different offensive coordinators, or a different coordinator every year, it's tough to learn a new system. Right? So,
totally
Tom Brady has been in the same system for over 10 years. Tony Romo, been in the same system for over 10 years. Ben Roethlisberger, been in the same system for, I believe, like 5 or 6 years now. They did have a coaching change. But I think what I'm trying to get at is, for a young quarterback, you want some stability. So Ken Wisenhunt would definitely be a good hire. I will say, though, in his head coaching career, Ken Wisenhunt has a record of 40 wins and 70 losses.
Yeah.
So it's not the most attractive record,
no,
but as an offensive coordinator or a quarterbacks coach strictly dealing with Jared Goff, I do like that.
Yeah, and the Wisenhunt, when given talent, which I think the Rams have a good bit of talent, especially on defense, he's been good. Obviously, I mentioned he was with the Super Bowl with the Cardinals when he had Kurt Warner, Larry Fitzgerald, all those guys, Anquan Bolden. He was very good. They were in playoffs every year. He was thrown in the waters with Tennessee with a bad roster. The Cardinals couldn't get him a quarterback at all later in his coaching career. So I think the record's a little skewed. But that's a good point that you bring that up, since a lot of people have been complaining about Jeff Fisher's record. Maybe you don't hire a guy with a worse record. I agree with that. But my other one's Bill Musgrave. He's the offensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders. Now, obviously, Raiders, another top 10 offense with a good quarterback. The guy has developed Matt Ryan and Derek Carr now. And he also helped Sam Bradford become a pretty good quarterback back when he was the Eagles offensive coordinator too. So the guy, another quarterback guru, an offensive guy on a good offensive team. The only difference with him and Wisenhunt is he's never been a head coach. He's been an associate head coach, but he's never been a head coach. So I think those two guys, go out and look for them. Obviously, I don't know if they're available. I'm guessing Wisenhunt would be more available, just since I think the Chargers probably won't make the playoffs. The Raiders, he'll be a hot commodity, and I don't know if they'll want to pay him, Musgrave. But no, I just think if anybody can think of anybody else, if you can think of anybody else, I just want them to get an offensive guy, make it more a balanced team, and they'll be a lot more fun team to watch. We gotta get Fisher out of there, man. It's not good.
Yeah, it's time. Every dog has its day, and it's time to go.
It is.
Move on.
It is. So now I want to look at some of the games this weekend, some of the bigger games. So I want to talk about the Redskins and Cardinals, since this is just essentially for me. But the Redskins, this is a big game because there's a lot of teams clumped together at the bottom of the NFC. And although a lot of people may think the Cardinals are totally out of it, if they were to beat the Redskins, they'd only be one game out of the playoffs. So I actually think this is one of the better games of the weekend. Another big game is the Seahawks and Panthers, just because I think the Panthers can actually beat the Seahawks. That's a tough team with Cam Newton stuff. I wanted to start on the Cardinals, though. Do you think they can finally step up and get a win against a team that they need to? They didn't get a win against Minnesota, who they need to get. They didn't get a win against Atlanta. Do you think they step up this week and get it?
You know, I want to say they do, and I hope they do, because it would be nice to see the Redskins lose. It would actually, if the Redskins lose, the Cowboys would clinch a playoff berth.
Yeah, there you go.
And or if Tampa Bay loses, the Cowboys would clinch a playoff berth. But going back to this Cardinals-Redskins matchup, the Cardinals are at home, where they tend to play a little better at home. You get the crowd advantage, crowd noise. Their defense, the Cardinals' defense is still very good. You still have Patrick Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, Deion Buchanan. You still have playmakers. I think they've just been a little too inconsistent as far as maybe giving up some big plays, not being in their right assignment. Offensively, almost the same thing, just too inconsistent, and especially Carson Palmer. For a veteran of his stature to have the down season that he's having is very, very uneasy, especially for you as a Cardinals fan.
It's strange.
Where is it even coming from? I mean, coming into this season, the Cardinals, some people thought the Cardinals were going to the Super Bowl, especially the way that they played last year. So I think for the Cardinals, they understand that it's getting to the point of do or die, now or never, and they need to take care of the rest of their home games, and especially because this is an NFC matchup, I think that the Cardinals come out and get the win. I think it's going to be a close game. The Redskins do have one of the best passing attacks in the league. Last Thursday on Thanksgiving against the Cowboys, Kirk Cousins pretty much, I think he had close to, if not 400 yards passing.
Good game, yeah.
Yeah, so the Cardinals secondary is going to really have to buckle down and be ready, because the Redskins receivers are definitely going to be, they throw the ball, I believe it's more than 60% of the time. So it's going to be a close matchup, but I'm going to go with your Cardinals.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals will win just because of the fact that they absolutely need to. If they lose, there's still a chance they make the playoffs. But essentially, I've been saying that if they don't win their next two matchups, which are against the Redskins and Saints, two teams that are right there trying to make the playoffs with them, similar records. If they don't win these next two games, I think I actually said this on the podcast last week. If they don't win these next two games, season's over. They're not going to make playoffs. They're going to have extreme help to get in, and they'd essentially be the same record as the Rams. And we already deemed them out of the playoffs. So I think they'll come out. They'll finally get a win. I think they don't like playing those early road games, it's a stupid excuse, but they don't play good. That the offensive line actually got better against the Falcons, although the Falcons did score or did end up winning the game. The offensive line played a lot better, and I think that will help. With you said that front seven for the Redskins is pretty good. So I think the Cardinals get a win. It'll be tight. I think they'll get the win. What do you think about Panthers and Seahawks?
That, I think, is going to be another tight matchup. Richard Sherman coming out and kind of throwing a little jab at Cam Newton, saying it's karma from last year when Cam Newton beat Seattle in Seattle to advance in the playoffs, and then Cam Newton went over and pulled the 12th man flag from I believe, I'm not sure if he pulled it from a fan or if he just pulled it. It was just hanging, but he kind of ripped it off and threw it. So that was definitely a little jab, and I think I guarantee Cam Newton heard that, and I think he's going to be ready to rock and roll for this game. I don't think the Panthers have any shot to make the playoffs, so I think they're just playing for pride. But I do think they're the type of team that's not just going to lay down easily. On paper, Seattle should win this game. Seattle's definitely rolling, even though they did lose against Tampa Bay. Every team has one or two games during the season where sometimes things just don't go your way. So I think Seattle's going to come out fired up because they know that they put off a bad performance last week, and they're going to want to come out and show that that was just a fluke and that's not who they really are. So I'm going to give Seattle that win, especially because they're at home as well. I think it'll be a back-and-forth matchup. I think both teams will be able to score. I think Carolina will be able to score against Seattle's kind of vaunted defense. Seattle's actually pretty banged up right now. They're still without Bennett, their defensive end, the stud defensive end. He's actually been out for the last 4 weeks, I believe. So I forget the injury that he's dealing with, but it's obviously serious because he's been out for close to a month. Earl Thomas, their Pro Bowl safety, is still out, and I believe he's going to be out for a few more weeks. So they're down a few of their big stars. Obviously, they still got Richard Sherman, and I believe Cam Chancellor is back. He's been back for the last couple weeks. So I'm going to go Seattle, but another tight, close NFC matchup. Who you got?
I was actually thinking earlier this week that the Seahawks would kind of just take care of them pretty easily, probably beat them by 2 touchdowns. But I think when Sherman said this stuff about Cam, I expect Cam to come out and now want to beat Sherman and the Seahawks. I think if this was just a normal game, you think, oh, Seattle just lost Tampa Bay. They're going to want to prove a point, especially against a good defense. They're going to want to come out there and just, kind of kick the heck out of Seattle. Or Seattle's going to want to kick the heck out of Carolina. But now that Sherman, he had to run his mouth, and now I think Cam's going to come out and really want to beat them. The Panthers are still without Kuechly, so I agree with you. I think the Seahawks win will be a lot closer, really, than anyone thought earlier in the week before Sherman said his comments. We will be right back on the Cover 2 podcast after these quick songs. After the break, we will be talking about the college football playoff. There's a big game tonight, and obviously the Final Four is going to be announced this Sunday. So it'll be fun to talk about, and we'll be talking about that on the other side of the break.
The stakes couldn't be any higher for Friday night's Pac-12 title game. You got UW knocking on the door. They got to win if they want to make sure they're in the college football playoff. Colorado, can they win their first Pac-12 title overall? Can they get to the Rose Bowl? Can they get to the college football playoff?
They've beaten ranked teams. They beat Tennessee on the road, which was ranked number 9, by 39 points. Yeah. They beat A&M, which was ranked number 6, by 19. They won in Tiger Stadium. And I just think it's unfair to the quality of that program to have people go out and even insinuate that they're overrated.
The committee's got no guts. The committee's got no guts.
OC Rock Radio, you were listening live to the Cover 2 podcast. I'm Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And right now we're going to be talking about what our thoughts are on the current top 4 teams in the college football playoff. Now, it's going to change a lot after this weekend, more than likely, if certain teams lose. And we'll give you our kind of our analysis on who we actually think our Final Four are going to be, and it's going to be a lot different, I'm guessing, than what they actually are. But right now, the Final Four, we're going to talk about the 4 teams that are in, because this is what's going to determine who the college football playoff 4 are. And those 4 teams are Alabama at number 1, Ohio State at number 2, Clemson at number 3, and Washington at number 4. You have 4 of the 5 power conference leaders right now up there. The college football playoff likes to do that, where they just kind of put the leaders of a conference in. Obviously, Oklahoma State are going to be playing a Big 12 game, but they more than likely will not get into the Final Four. So you have the Pac-12, SC, ACC, and Big 10 in right now. I want to give my opinion on what it is right now as far as who or if these teams really should be in. Alabama, 100% is number 1. I totally agree with that. I know you do too, Jared. I actually think if Alabama loses to Florida, they're still the number 1 team. So just anybody that's at Alabama right now or is an Alabama fan, just book your tickets to go to I believe it's either Arizona or it's the Georgia Dome. So just get ready to buy your tickets because you guys are going no matter what happens this weekend. Alabama's number 1 team. Number 2, Ohio State. I'm fine with that because they have beaten every opponent that's been good this season except for Penn State in a tough loss. They're a 1-loss team. I think it shows that they go into a big game against Michigan. They end up with the win, although I do actually think that Michigan still is the better team, even though Ohio State won. We'll talk about that a little later. But I'm fine with them being at number 2. Number 3 is Clemson, and this is one of the 2 I have a gripe with because I think Clemson's schedule is a lot easier than people think, and also I think that Clemson has had a tough time against essentially everybody they've played that's been good, and they have had a tough time against some teams that aren't very good. So they beaten Florida State. They beaten Louisville. Tough games, but they won. They lost to an average Pitt team. Now, I think Pitt actually might be ranked in the college football 25. I'm not sure, but they're very high up there. So they're not really ranked highly. And they have wins against Auburn at first game of the season. And if they were to beat Virginia Tech, obviously they would earn that spot in the game, in my opinion. But I just think right now they shouldn't be in. I think they should actually have to earn their way into it. I think they're only in because they were in a national title game last year, and they had a lot of NFL players drafted, and people are hyping up Deshaun Watson, who's good, but the rest of their team isn't that good. The defense isn't that good. The receivers haven't played up to the standard. They have no running game. So I think they're only up there right now because they're the ACC leader, and they're a lot of hype in the offseason. The fourth team is Washington, another team I have a gripe with since I believe they're not even the second best team in the Pac-12, and they're in the Final Four. I actually think Colorado and USC are both better than Washington. USC proved it. Colorado has a chance to prove it in about an hour and a half. So I obviously have a problem with Washington. I don't think they should be there. I think it should be Michigan or Wisconsin or Penn State. I just think they're better. I think Washington, and again, they've had a lot of good wins, but they've also had an easier schedule, and I believe the one legit team they played this season, who was USC, they lost to. So, Jared, I'll let you take the cake. I kind of went on a little bit of a rant there.
No.
Wanted to give my opinion on the Final Four. I know you agree with actually a lot of the stuff I just said.
I do. When it comes to Alabama, I really have nothing else to add. They are the best team. Book their flight to the championship game. You might as well.
Hotel rooms too.
Get the
book. Just figure out which bars you're going to go to.
Yeah, the championship shirts. Just start throwing them out.
Put the hats on.
Yeah, it's almost a wrap. Yeah. I say keyword almost. The number 2 team, Ohio State. I agree that they should be in the top 4 because they did beat Michigan, but I'm not so sure that they should be number 2. Now, where you put the 3, 4, I really don't. I'm not sure if that necessarily matters. I'm just not sure. I think Clemson right now might be playing a little bit better than Ohio State. Now, Michigan, in my opinion, I think they have a little better talent than Ohio State does. And at the beginning of the season, I would have never said that. But after seeing Michigan play and seeing how just scary their defense is, I mean, their defense is unreal. Ohio State, in my opinion, got very lucky beating Michigan last week. Obviously, very close game, 30-27 in double overtime. But looking at Ohio State's schedule and their record so far, to me, they're too inconsistent. Let's see here.
Ohio State is?
Yes, Ohio State. They beat Nebraska 62-3. Nebraska is not a horrible team. They beat Maryland 62-3. Yeah. And then they play at Michigan State, who at the time 2 weeks ago, I believe, only had 3 wins on the season, and it was 17-6. They only won by 1 point. So to me, they're just a little too inconsistent. Their 2 best wins of the season, September 17th, they went to Oklahoma, and they beat Oklahoma handedly. That was a very not surprising win because everyone knows Ohio State's a good team, but I think everyone was a little overhyped on Oklahoma. Obviously, Oklahoma hasn't been the team that maybe people thought they were. And then going back to this game last week against Michigan, those have been their 2 best games so far this season, but they're just a little too inconsistent, and I can't trust them going into this process. But the flip side is I can't take them out right now.
Yeah.
So I'm a little kind of up in the air with them. Going to the number 3 team, Clemson, who I think should actually be number 2 in these polls. They also have had somewhat of not an up and down year, but they've had a couple games where you're saying, okay, you have Deshaun Watson, who is supposedly supposed to be the best quarterback in the nation, hasn't really played like that the entire season. As you mentioned, they beat Auburn to start the year. Very, very good win. They beat Louisville with Lamar Jackson, who will most likely be the Heisman for this season. So they beat Louisville. They beat Florida State. They've got some good wins. Obviously, their one loss was at home against Pittsburgh, who many people, I don't I don't think anyone saw that coming.
No.
Even though they did only lose by 1 point, it was a very close game. But still, that was a tough loss for them. So I think Clemson should actually move up and be the number 2, and I would actually put Ohio State down to number 3. Now, here's my gripe. I do agree with you that Washington, there's one reason why Washington is in the top 4, and that's because they're 11-1, and I think the committee wanted to spread out the top 4 teams, and they wanted a Pac-12 team in there. Of
course. No, that they always do that.
Yes, so I think that's really the only reason why Washington is in here. Looking at Washington's schedule, I don't want to call it pathetic, but that's kind of what it is. I mean, they played Idaho, I believe at Presbyterian.
Oh, their non-conference record is horrendous.
It's ridiculous. And you know
Rutgers, who's like 1-11.
The thing that I think is hurting Washington is the fact that the rest of the Pac-12, other than Colorado and USC, have really had down years.
Yeah.
Washington
State's
year.
been pretty good too.
Yeah, Washington State, okay. But Stanford, bad. Oregon, bad. Arizona State, mediocre. But as a whole, the Pac-12 has definitely been it's just been a bad year overall. So I think that's also hurt Washington, their strength of schedule. If teams like Stanford and Oregon, and Arizona State were doing well and had above 500 records, I think that would help Washington's case. But because they didn't really play any meaningful teams other than USC, who they lost to, it's tough for me to put them in that top 4 because
doesn't make any sense.
If you're going to put Washington up against Alabama, please, no way.
I kind of hope it happens just so that Alabama just beats the crap out of them, and then we can discuss it and just be like, oh, why were they in there in the first place?
Exactly, yeah. And then even if they were to play Ohio State or Clemson, I'm not saying it's going to be cakewalks, but I don't think that's the best matchup. And when you're talking about putting the best 4 teams into this playoffs, I don't think Washington will match up with these other 3 elite teams. I think that Michigan would have a better chance of knocking off one of these other top 3 teams than Washington. So, we'll see what happens. Like you said, tonight, Washington is in the Pac-12 championship game against Colorado. So we'll see what happens there. If Washington does win tonight, I think they're going to secure that number 4 spot, and I don't think there's anything that the committee can do to take them away from that. Because other than their loss to USC, they will be 12-1. So, like it goes back to the record, and their record speaks for itself. So, unfortunately, unless Colorado can come out and get that W tonight.
Go Buffaloes.
Yeah, let's go Buffaloes. We're going to have Washington in that number 4 spot.
So now, do you want to do the predictions for the game, the big conference games, or do you want to go to Do You Care next?
Let's tease that. Let's make you guys wait a little bit.
We're going to make you guys wait.
And let's do a little Do You Care.
Let's do You Care. Well, right after this break, of course.
With the chips on the line, Plax, you're in the game. Who do you want under center trying to get you the ball? Eli or Big Ben?
I'm going to go with number 10 because I know he's going to put it up there in a nice spot for me to go up and get it. And, he's going to give me that wink or that signal, or he's going to grab his face mask or pat his thigh or pat the side of his helmet and give me the signal for the best route for me to get up.
USA Today Sports is reporting that as part of Major League Baseball's tentative collective bargaining agreement, the MLB All-Star Game will no longer determine home field advantage in the World Series.
So the fact remains that Conor McGregor just got his boxing license so that he could call Floyd's bluff.
OC Rock Radio. It is 4:50 here in Southern California. About an hour left in the show. And we got still a good hour of content left, including right now, it is time for Do You Care? Me and Jared's favorite game. We know it's your favorite game, too. And so this is, once again, you never heard it before. This is a game where we say, do you care about a certain topic? And we tell you whether we care about it. So, Jared, do you care? We'll start off with this. Do you care that Plexico Burress said he would rather have Eli Manning rather than Big Ben in crunch time.
I do care. That's actually a pretty interesting that Plexico would say that. Before the show, when you had first mentioned this, I didn't realize that Plexico said this, by the way, and you had brought up a point that Plexico played with Eli, obviously, before his shooting incident, the gun incident, and then he played with Ben Roethlisberger afterwards. So obviously, Plexico wasn't the same player when he was playing with Big Ben, and he never won a championship with Big Ben. Obviously, the first Super Bowl that Eli won, he threw that over-the-shoulder pass to Plexico when they stunned the Patriots. So I think he has a little more of a history and connection with Eli Manning. They both quarterbacks have 2 Super Bowl wins. So, I mean, it's kind of, a toss-up. In my opinion, I would probably choose Big Ben. I don't know. As a Cowboy fan, Eli Manning, I can't pick him at all. But unfortunately, I got to give credit to the guy. He's won 2 Super Bowls, and he is very clutch. He's never missed an NFL start in his 14-year career. Or no, I'm sorry, 12-year career. So, yeah, I'm very, very shocked that Plexico would come out and say that. Nick, do you care that the MLB All-Star Game will no longer determine home field advantage?
I do care. I thought this was a long time coming. I think a lot of people agree with me on that. It shouldn't determine the World Series. I think the biggest problem with it was this year when we didn't get to see the Cubs clinch in Wrigley in a Game 7. I think it not that game wasn't unbelievable, but it could have been a little better if it was in Wrigley Field and you saw the Cubs fans, go nuts in the stadium and stuff like that. So, but no, this was a long time coming. There was no reason for it to determine the home field advantage of the World Series. I understand why, to make the game competitive, but the last couple of years, the managers and players haven't been acting like that. So you're really hoping that a bunch of players who don't care go out and win the league, the World Series. That's ridiculous. So I don't think it will actually hurt the game. I think it will actually make the game better. I think the players, there'll be a lot more fun stuff about the game rather than like an actual where everyone's tense and hoping that their league gets the World Series. But no, I think this is a long time coming, and I'm glad the MLB did it. Jared, do you care that the Joey Bosa-led San Diego Chargers will likely move to Los Angeles in 2017?
I do care because even though I'm definitely not a San Diego Chargers fan,
either was Eli Manning, by the way, too.
Oh yeah, apparently not. When he was able to finagle that trade, I have no idea how that happened. That's a whole nother topic that we can get into.
Never played with Eli Manning.
Oh my gosh! But I do care because I don't want to see 2 LA teams. I think the Chargers, at least for the NFL's sake, and there's not too many times where I actually back the NFL. But in this instance, I think it's better when you have teams that are spread out and not, 2 teams in one city. I know, obviously, in basketball, you have the Clippers. You've got the New Jersey Nets and the Knicks, not too far from each other. In baseball, you've got the Angels and the Dodgers, not too far. So you have, in other sports, you have some teams in the same cities. In the NFL, I think it's better when teams are more spread out. Obviously, the Jets and the Giants share the same stadium, and it's seemed to work out for them. But I think for the Chargers' sake, they've been trying so hard for so long to get their own stadium. They're fighting and crawling and trying to get every single penny out of any type of sponsorship that they can get to keep a stadium here. And it just seems like no one wants to fork out that money to help them. The NFL said that they would give, I think it was like $100 million to as a starting point. But the Chargers owner, I'm blanking on his name, forgive me, he doesn't want to fork up the rest of that money all on his own. So the fact that they can't get sponsorships is really telling. So he really has no other choice but go to LA. My personal opinion, I wish they would, be able to work it out to where they could stay in San Diego, keep the teams separate. Let Oakland maybe go to Vegas. You have a team in Vegas. You have a team in LA. You have a team in San Diego. Mm-hmm. I think that will work out much better. Nick, do you care that Conor McGregor just got his boxing license in California?
I do because this is a developing story in the whole Mayweather-McGregor type thing. Because McGregor now can actually box Mayweather legally in California. That fight can actually happen, and it won't happen in Vegas. It will happen in California if it does. I think, obviously, you still have to have Floyd come out and say they'll actually do the fight, but we all know McGregor's ready to do it. So we're all just waiting on Floyd. This was a developing story. It's good to see that it's actually progressing. I don't know if the fight will happen, but it's encouraging, and I'm glad it will happen in California. Jared, do you care that fired Oregon coach Mark Helfrich wants Chip Kelly, the 49ers coach, to be the next Oregon coach?
I care for one reason, and that's to get Chip Kelly out of the NFL. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this because I dislike the guy or anything like that. I obviously don't know him personally, and I'm sure he's a fantastic guy. But as far as coaching goes in the NFL, he's burned a lot of bridges so far. And the move to San Francisco obviously has not helped. When he was in Philadelphia, he pretty much had control of the entire team, personnel, different coaching changes. He was running the show. With San Francisco, all he's doing really is just coaching the team that they're giving him. And I understand that, it's only his first year and it's not necessarily, his players yet, but I think he's just a better college coach. Obviously, when he was with Oregon, he had them going to national championships and big-time bowl games, and they were rolling. And now Oregon, the last couple of years, they're not the Oregon team, the up-tempo, run-and-gun, fast-paced team that we're used to. So I don't think Chip Kelly wants to. I think he has too much pride, and I think he wants to stay in the NFL. But I think for his sake, it would be better if he did make a move back to the college level. And if he did, obviously, the most likely destination would be Oregon, not just because they have an open spot, but because of the familiarity and with the recruiting style that he would be able to bring in. Nick, do you care that Tiger Woods is playing well in his first tournament in over a year?
I don't care necessarily because the tournament doesn't matter. But it is encouraging to see Tiger playing well, since I think a lot of people just expected him to just kind of be pedestrian. It is only an 18-man field as well, so him doing well in an 18-man field is pretty. Anybody can do well in an 18-man field. So I don't care as far as the result of the actual tournament right now, but it is encouraging to see Tiger playing well, because I like Tiger, and I hope he kind of gets back, makes golf. It'd make golf a lot funner to watch, since you'd have a lot of those good guys like Spieth and McIlroy, and then Tiger coming in really battling each other every week. I think that'd be good. Jared, do you care that Giannis Cespedes is staying with the Mets?
I don't care, but I think it's good for Cespedes because he finally will hopefully get a chance to have some stability. He's jumped around with 4 different teams now in the past 4 to 5 years. So he actually had an opportunity. He was being courted by other teams, and they were offering him more money. But he chose to go back to the Mets because they offered him a no-trade clause. So essentially what that means is if another team wants to make a trade with the Mets, he is able to veto that trade. So he pretty much has control over the next 4 years of his playing career. Plus, he still gets to make $110 million.
Oh, yeah.
So he's not going to be hurting in that category. So good for him. Happy for him. Hopefully he can find some stability. And the Mets are a good team. They're definitely an up-and-coming team. So I think it's a win-win situation for both parties. Nick, last question. Do you care that Doc Rivers got ejected a few nights ago against the Nets?
I don't care that he got ejected, but I do care the Clippers lost to the Nets, because the Nets have no talent and no NBA team should lose to them. I know people say they play hard or whatever, but doesn't every NBA team play hard? Come on. The Clippers, who we've been talking about pretty highly on the show last couple weeks, decided to be the Clippers and lose 3 games in a row. They would have had the better record than Golden State right now. They don't, because they lost to the Nets. They got killed by the Pacers, 91-70. It's the lowest score that Doc Rivers' team, I believe, has ever scored in the game, 70 points. So Clippers, they did beat the Cavs last night, which was nice. But no, I don't care about Doc Rivers getting thrown out, because I thought he was unjust. He got thrown out pretty much for no reason. But I do care that the Clippers became the Clippers again last week, which is concerning to a Clipper fan. On the other side of this song, we will come back with our predictions of the conference championship games in college football. OC Rock Radio, you were listening to the final segment of the Cover 2 podcast. Once again, I'm Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And right now, we are going to predict the conference championship games. And at the end of the prediction, we're going to give you who we think our final 4 teams should be. They're going to be interesting, so stay tuned through the whole thing. So we'll start with the SEC championship game. Alabama and Florida at the Georgia Dome. Jared, who you got?
I'm rolling with Alabama. Roll Tide. I think Florida is a good team, and I think defensively they're actually better than most people want to give them credit for. They have one, if not 2, top defensive backs who could probably go in the first round of this upcoming NFL draft. But I think in the end, Alabama just has too much talent all around, and their depth is going to be too much for Florida to handle. So I think in the first half, it will be a semi-close game. Alabama, might be up 7, maybe 10 points. And I think in the second half, Alabama's depth will really show, and I think they're going to be able to pull away for a relatively easy win against a Florida team. So not trying to knock Florida or anything like that, but Alabama is just they have too much depth, too much experience. They reload every year, and they've got Nick Saban. So roll Tide.
I'm going to agree with you. Alabama, I think we already proclaimed them champions anyways, so I don't think anybody expects us to pick Florida or they'd be contradicting
upset alert.
The hell out of ourselves. But I thought this would have been a lot closer of a game if Florida would have beat Florida State last week. But once they lost Florida State, I was like, okay, Alabama's got this one. The Gators, they got no chance, and they're going to get rolled over by the Crimson Tide. This is not a championship game necessarily, but it's the Big 12. It's for the Big 12 championship. It's Oklahoma State. It's Bedlam. It's 9 versus 10. Jared, who you got?
I'm going with the home team. I'm going Oklahoma. I think this will be a shootout. Oklahoma State can put up some points.
It will be Bedlam.
It'll be Bedlam.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm over under. I think each team can score 50. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the defenses will hopefully play a little better, knowing that this is a quote-unquote championship game. But, no, I think this is going to be somewhat of a shootout, and I think Oklahoma in the end pulls it out and gets that W. Even though there is no Big 12 championship, that's a whole other conversation that we could sit here and talk about. I think that all 5 major conferences need a championship game to really determine a true winner and a true champion. But in this specific case, I'm going Oklahoma. Nick?
I got the Sooners as well. I think the Oklahoma State Cowboys are definitely hyped up way too high. I know essentially they only have lost 1 game this season. We've talked about that game against Central Michigan. They won. They got screwed by the refs. But if you look at who they played and the types of games, they should have been killing some of their opponents, and they were barely beating teams like Texas and TCU and stuff. Just bad teams. So Oklahoma, they're still legit. They're a good team. I don't know if they'll get into the Final Four, but they'll win this game for sure. Clemson versus Virginia Tech ACC championship game. Jared, who you got?
Going Clemson, number 3 team. They're going to stay in that playoff picture and make it in. Virginia Tech has a good defense, and they've always been known for their special teams, so who knows, they might have a little trick up their sleeve. They're going to need a few tricks up their sleeve if they want to have any chance of upsetting Clemson, but I think this will be a relatively easy game for Clemson, and they roll into the college playoffs. Nick?
I'm going to disagree with you on the easy game part. I think Clemson will win. They're just too talented, and Virginia Tech, they're a good team. I like what they've done. It's encouraging. I've always liked Virginia Tech for some reason. It's encouraging to see their first year after Frank Beamer that they're a ranked team, and they were very good this season. Tough loss last week, but other than that, they actually beat the heck out of Virginia last week. It was the week before they had a bad loss. But I think this will be a close game because I think Virginia Tech, you throw your hearts out there for the game. You're not going to the Final Four because you're ranked 23rd or whatever they're ranked. And so I think Clemson will be tough, but I think they'll win the game. Big Ten title game, Wisconsin and Penn State. Who you got?
I'm I'm going with the Nittany Lions.
Nittany Lions.
I'm going Penn State. I'm getting on that bandwagon. Now, I have to admit that I haven't seen all of their games this year, Penn State's games, and I don't know a whole lot about their team, but they seem to be riding a hot streak right now. And at the beginning of the year, I probably would have put Penn State, I don't know, maybe top 20, maybe 18, 19, somewhere around there. But they've really improved. And Wisconsin is a good team, but Wisconsin did kind of get rolled over by Michigan earlier in the year. And Wisconsin, to me, has been, I think they're ranked a little too high. I can't trust Wisconsin. I think they've been a little too inconsistent. So I'm going Penn State in Indianapolis. Nick?
I'm going to agree with you. I actually originally, right before I picked it, was going to pick Wisconsin. And I changed my mind halfway through this thing. I don't know. I'm going to pick Penn State. I've been behind them ever since about 2 weeks ago. They are 8-0 since going 2-2 to start the season. And that last loss was to Michigan. They look like a very good team. I love their head coach, James Franklin, former Vanderbilt coach. So I think they're going to get the win. This is going to be a very good game to watch. Wisconsin, I think, is a very good team too. I just think Penn State's too hot. They'll get the win, and I want to make it difficult on the college football playoff committee. Because are you really going to put Penn State below Ohio State, even though they beat them?
Oh boy!
So it'll make it a lot difficult, and you put that 6th team in the ranking and really make a case for them to get in, for sure. All right, this game's tonight. I personally believe this is the best conference game we have. It has a lot of championship game stake to it. Colorado and Washington. Jared, who you got?
I'm rolling with I'm rolling with Washington.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
It's that tight.
I know. It's I think I do agree that this will probably be the best, or at least closest game out of all the big championship games. I think it's going to be back and forth. Colorado has had a great season, completely come out of nowhere in a sense to come up to the number 8 team in the country. I'm going to roll with Browning and Washington. I think their quarterback is elite. I think he's too good. I think he's going to be able to kind of chuck the ball around. And I'm going to say Washington is going to win by 10. And not unfortunately, but Washington will stay at that number 4 seed in the college football playoffs.
Like I said in the college football segment, Washington is the 3rd best team in the Pac-12. I'm going with the Buffaloes tonight. I really like the heart of the way Colorado plays. They run a lot. Their quarterback, Sefo Lufau, I like the way he runs. They play hard. They got a group of seniors that really wants to win. They were horrendous 2 years ago. And now they're legit. They got a great defense. They got a good running game, actually a great running game. And I think Washington's, fairy tale season is going to come to an end tonight as far as them being in the Final Four. They'll still get into a good bowl. But I'm going with the Buffaloes. I think the Buffaloes will win a tight game. I think they'll kick a field goal to win it. But I'm going with Colorado.
Interesting. I think I will make another prediction on top of yours.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Colorado does win tonight, I think Colorado goes to the Rose Bowl, and I think they play Michigan.
Oh,
very interesting. On the flip side, if Washington wins, I think that puts USC in the Rose Bowl against the likes of a Michigan.
Yeah, no, I think that should be dope. But to move on to that, it's time for us to pick our Final Four. So now we can pick who's going to be in the Rose Bowl and all that stuff. I will start because mine's a lot more radical. Let me just find my phone because I wrote this all down. I'll just give you a short story, everyone. I took a car ride back from Arizona over the Thanksgiving break, and it took me 3 hours to get from Palm Springs to the Morongo Casino, and they're about 10 miles away from each other. So I had a lot of time to kill and write all this stuff down. But I had to suffer in the car for 3 hours. I don't think Jared had to do that. So
I did not.
No, you did not have to do
thank
that.
you. No,
did you stay here for Thanksgiving?
I did. I was able to stay local. My family and my girlfriend's family are both here in South Orange County. So a little 10-minute drive.
There you go.
Not too far, man.
Easy.
Unlike yourself, who made the trek.
Yeah. Wasn't feeling very good after that.
No, especially stuffed with turkey.
Yeah, no, I know. Apple pie too.
Okay.
So enough of that.
I'm hungry.
My top 4 are as follows. Okay. I'll start with who I think should have been in the Final Four, like let's say 1 or 2 weeks ago. Alabama, like I said, they're number 1 team. They should be number 1 even if they lose to Florida. I actually think that USC is the second best team in college football. If you look at all the rest of the team's schedules and you look at who they played, USC has been the hottest team. They're 8-0 since starting Sam Darnold and since going 1-3 to start the season. Like I said, they put Sam Darnold into the Utah game and he single-handedly almost brought them back. He beat Colorado. They beat Washington. Those are 2 top 10 teams. So I think USC is actually the second best team. You look at their roster; they got a fantastic roster. But you know what? They're getting screwed this year, and people are looking at their record too much. I think the third best team is the Michigan Wolverines. I think Michigan. I'm not looking at record, and I'm not even. I know Michigan's a better team. I saw them play Ohio State. They didn't get the win, but some questionable calls by the referees at the end of the game got Ohio State the win. I still think Michigan's better, but Ohio State is the number 4 team. I think they get in at number 4, or at least I thought they should have been number 4. I tested you a little bit. You said Ohio State should be moved down. I think they should be number 4. So those are my 4. Who I actually think is going to end up the Final Four: Alabama number 1. I think Ohio State will still be number 2. I think Clemson will be number 3. And because I predicted Washington would lose, I actually think Penn State's number 4. I think they get in. I think they put Penn State over Michigan. Although Penn State lost to Michigan early in the season, they made some changes to their offense, a lot like USC. If you actually look at Penn State and USC, their schedules are a lot similar. They had terrible starts to their season. Penn State 2-2, USC 1-3. They've been 8-0 since after making changes to their offense. So I think I got to put them in since I'm all for USC. They've essentially done the same thing. Although Penn State did lose to Michigan, I think they get in to the 4, and we set up that USC Michigan Rose Bowl. What do you think, Jared? Who are you guys?
Wow. I'm a little shocked by that Penn State.
Yeah.
Penn State number 4.
That was a tough one to decide.
That was, man, you must have been sitting in the car a little too long.
Yeah, too long. No, I know.
Yeah, I think you got car sick in there.
I almost put Oklahoma State in the game.
Oh, boy.
I did that.
That's a little too much for me. So my perfect top 4 would Alabama, number 1. Not going to even argue that. We're going to go straight to number 2. I'm going to put Michigan at number 2. I think defense wins championships. And I think Michigan has the second best defense in the country, right behind Alabama. And as the season has gone on, Michigan's offense has evolved. Now, their starting quarterback still has that shoulder injury. He was able to play through that entire game against Ohio State, but and then he'll probably get a week off after this week's games. But I'm going to go Michigan number 2. I think they are the second best team, and they can really match up with anyone because of their defense and the playmakers that they have on offense.
Jabril Peppers?
Yes, Jabril Peppers, who will definitely be a Heisman candidate.
For sure.
Ohio State, I'm putting down at number 3. Earlier at the beginning of the show, I said that I think Ohio State should be in the top 4, but I wasn't completely sure if they should be number 2. So I'm just going to move them down 1 spot and put them at number 3. And my number 4 team is where I do agree with you. I think USC should be in that top 4. And this isn't just a homer pick or anything, even though I do follow USC a lot. It's not necessarily about how you start, it's how you finish. Mm-hmm. And most people, including the committee, is going to look at those 3 losses that USC had. But really, if you look at the way that they've been playing, they've won 8 games in a row. They beat a Washington team who was ranked in the top 4 at Washington, by the way. They're just rolling on all cylinders right now. They have a Dory Jackson who is probably the West Coast version of Michigan's Jabril Peppers. I mean, he does it all. I believe last game he had a punt return for a touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a kick return for a touchdown.
It's ridiculous.
It's unheard of. So right now USC is rolling on all cylinders. I would put them as the number 4, and those would be my top 4 if that were my selections. Once again, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, USC. Now, coming into reality, who I actually think the committee will choose is very similar to Nick, except for the number 4.
I knew this was coming.
Yeah, sorry, buddy. So who I really think is how it's going to end up, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and because I have Washington winning tonight, I think they're going to stay in, and I think this is going to be unchanged, and I think Washington will get that number 4 seed.
And so I know we're both disappointed in what's going to happen with college because we both believe there's 2 or 3 teams that are better than a lot of the teams in the Final Four right now, and for some reason the college football playoff the committee doesn't see this. Now, I want to just go over, and if you look at the top 11 teams, I'm including USC in here because we both believe USC should be at least up there. If you look at the way the teams are spread out record-wise, the top 4 teams all have 1 loss or 0 losses. Then the next, The next 4 teams are 10-2. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are 9-2. And USC is 9-3. And if you were actually to keep going down, it goes 9-3 and it goes to 8-4. Everyone's getting paralyzed by records. Okay? Records aren't everything. And like I said a couple weeks ago, is the college football Final Four, are you picking the 4 best teams or the teams that deserve it the most? And by deserve it, I mean like there's some stake or there's some stake in their conference that they need to get in, or people just generally think they're a powerhouse every year, so they're going to get in. I think that happens a lot. So Jared, I just want to get your opinion on it. The paralyzing of records, because you see it right here. It's 12-0, 11-1, 10-2, 9-2, 9-3, and 8-4. The top 14 teams. It's ridiculous.
It is. And, for the average fan or the average person, that is probably the number one thing that they would look at is your record. And obviously, if you're going strictly on record, then yes, the committee got it right. The point of having this 13 person committee was to be able to sit in a table or sit in around a table and be able to discuss who each person thought the best teams were. Not necessarily the best, who had the best record, but it's like I said, it's not always how you start, it's how you finish. So I'm surprised that, and I'm not saying, like I said, I think USC should be number 4, but I'm surprised that they're only 11th. From last week, they only moved up 1 spot. To me, it just goes back to who is the hot team right now, who is pumping on all cylinders, and who would give the best matchups, because that's really what you want. And especially for college football as a whole, you want the best ratings, you want everyone watching, and you want the 4 best teams to get in. So, in my personal opinion, like I said, going back to who I really believe should be in, I think USC should be number 4, and then Ohio State, then Michigan, then Alabama. I think those 4 teams are all playing the best football as of today, and I think it would be the best matchup. It would be nice to see Alabama and USC play again, because I think Alabama would still win that game, but there's no way that USC would get blown out. If you remember the very first game of this college football season, Alabama and USC played at Texas Stadium, in Arlington, at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, and Alabama just whooped them. And then obviously last week, Michigan and Ohio State played in their typical rivalry game. So I think it would be very intriguing to have a rematch of both of those games, and then the winners from there would go on. So I do agree with you in that sense, and I hope the committee somehow listens to our podcast, gets a hold of it. Check us out, guys.
Jeff Long, where you at?
Nick and Jared, Cover 2. give us a call. We'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, we'll explain. I'll give you my whole algorithm I came up with. Go ahead and toward the Morongo.
Exactly. We'll take a little drive, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
We'll talk. We'll get your head straight, and we'll get this college football rankings right.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I just realized we actually did have the exact same four teams in. But wouldn't it be exciting to have that USC Alabama matchup, which would be fantastic, and that Michigan Ohio State, a chance for them to play again? I think if you had to come up with the two best games, those are the two best games. So, but I actually like where you said the reason we have the committee is for them to sit down and talk about it. This is essentially the BCS championship rankings.
Almost.
I mean, you even looking at like it's Michigan ahead of directly Wisconsin and Penn State, who they beat. So it's literally like the BCS computer was like, oh, they beat them, so there they go. So it just needs a change for sure. And I think a lot of people would agree with us too. But the committee wasn't made to just throw teams in there based on their record. They were supposed to mull things over and figure out who the four best teams are. And that's not what they're doing. Nonetheless, should be a lot of fun games to watch. Before we go, I wanted to get an opinion on three different things. That'll be quick.
Oh, boy.
First, Max Brown wrote a heartfelt letter leaving USC. Max Brown is the quarterback that Sam Darnold
replaced.
He took his job, and Sam Darnold hasn't lost a game since. What do you think? Do you even care that Max Brown left?
I think it's one of those things where it's a gut check for a player. In the spring and in the off season, both of these guys were actually competing. It was never, Max Brown automatically have the quarterback job.
Yeah.
Coach Helton wanted, a kind of quarterback competition. That's what they preach is competition at every position. It doesn't matter if you're a Dory Jackson or a Juju Smith, the stars of the team. He always wants competition. He wants guys to get better. So for Max Brown, I understand why he's leaving because in today's age of sports and especially college football, you see players leaving all the time and going to different schools because they're not getting PT, as they call it, playing time. Mm-hmm. But I wish he would have stayed because I do think he is a good quarterback. I think his pride was hurt a little bit, and I think he just kind of wants a little bit of a fresh start. You agree, or what do you think?
Yeah, Sam Darnold's so good that you obviously want that depth. You want that backup. I saw what happened with UCLA this year, not having a good quarterback, and if you don't have the depth, you suck.
Mm-hmm. So
I would like to have that guy, but I'm sure USC will bring in someone, or they have someone coming up ready to play. I don't really care that he left. Hopefully he just doesn't go to like another Pac-12 team.
I don't believe so. If I'm saying this correctly, as long as you have eligibility left and you want to transfer, you can't transfer within your conference.
Oh, okay.
Don't quote me. I do need to look that up.
Uh-huh.
I believe if you're granted fifth year of eligibility, then I believe you can go wherever you want. But if you still have years left, which means if you are not a senior, I believe if you want to transfer, you can't go within your conference. I need to double check that. And next week's podcast, I will have an answer for you.
I think, nonetheless, he would still have to take a year off.
Yes.
Right? So no matter what, he wouldn't be playing next year if he were to come to a Pac-12 team or even probably one of the Power 5 teams. But yeah, I think you're right about that. I don't think he'd come back 12. And it's good because you don't want coaches, maybe getting in a kid's ear saying, hey, come to Colorado or something. We're not going to have the quarter. Yeah. So you don't want that stuff happening. All right. Little high school news. Lonzo Ball, as you know, stud UCLA point guard. They play a big game against Kentucky tomorrow morning. Lonzo Ball's brother, LiAngelo Ball, is currently at Chino Hills. The last two games, he scored 56 points and 76 points. So he's averaging 66 points in his last two games. Just wanted to get your opinion on that.
I mean, the kid's a stud.
Yeah.
I don't know what that family is feeding their children.
He's actually considered the worst out of the three brothers.
I was actually just going to say the youngest brother is supposed to be the best.
LaMelo.
Yes, and he's, I believe, only a sophomore.
Yeah,
he's
real small looking kid.
Yes, so just look out. It's it's unreal. In high school, kids are able to just kind of put teams on their back. And, in basketball, it's one of those situations where if you're on a hot streak, you just let that kid roll. So he's obviously looking to, follow his older brother into UCLA, and he's making a big statement. So I actually did hear that from another friend of mine who is a high school coach, and he told me that, and I was obviously shocked because 76 points. I mean, some high school teams can't even put up 76 points as a whole.
No, that's
so it's very, very surprising. But no, I mean that's amazing. That's great for him, and that's something that he'll be able to remember for the rest of his life. He'll be able to put on his highlight reel. And UCLA is just going to be raking in that whole trio of brothers. I
know. I was just going to say that too. They're all three of them are going to UCLA. So you have to guess that Lonzo will leave. LiAngelo will probably come in, he'll leave, and then LaMelo will come in and he'll leave. But UCLA going to have 3 studs in a row. Last thing, game of the century tomorrow. Who you got, Mater Dei or Bosco at Angel Stadium?
Woo-wee. This is very, very tough. I'm gonna go Bosco.
Okay.
I think Bosco is. Mater Dei is. It's just they're like royalty. You just expect them to be in it. But I think Bosco's on a roll. I think they're on just a hot streak. I think the way that they're playing right now is unmatched. And so I'm gonna go Bosco in a very, very close game.
Well, let me just set the stage because I acted like we were talking to a bunch of people from Orange County there. The game, it's the CIF championship game. It's the state of California's championship game, not the actual state championship, but it's the Southern California's section. It's St. John Bosco, who's rated number 4 in the nation on all of high school football, versus Mater Dei High School, Matt Barkley, Matt Leinart. A couple guys that have gone. Josh Rosen went to St. John Bosco. Mater Dei's number 1. They're the best team in the nation for high school football. So you're getting, essentially the best matchup you could come up with. They're calling it the game of the century. It should be good. Mater Dei got Bosco, I think, by a touchdown the first time they met earlier this season because they're both in the same league. But I'm going to go Mater Dei by little. I think Mater Dei will eventually. They're just better. They got better players. They got the St. Brown brothers, who have a brother at Notre Dame right now, Equininius. I think that's how you say his name. I'm not sure. But I'm going to go with Mater Dei. I will be there at the game this Saturday. It starts at 7:30, Angel Stadium. That anybody wants to go that's living here in Southern California should be a good game. That will do it for the Cover 2 podcast today. This was fun. We are likely going to go watch the Colorado-Washington game.
That's where I'm heading.
It starts in about a half an hour. But as far as this podcast goes, this is done. I want the College Football Playoff Committee to know it's okay to use your hearts and not just put the records in there, for sure.
Give us a call. Yeah, OC Rock Radio.
Yeah, Jeff Long. For Nick Nenad,
I'm Jared Smith.
This has been the Cover 2 podcast.